The Battleground Wargames Show 2022 was held at the Queen's Campus Sports Hall in Stockton-on-Tees on Saturday the 26th of November. With easy access and ample parking, the event was well attended, with over 650 visitors coming along to see the show. Battleground was very welcoming, and you were presented with a useful show guide at the entrance, giving you a layout of the hall. The trade stands were clearly labelled, so you could plan your shopping and make a few purchases just in time for Christmas. Inside you could find the majority of the 30 traders scattered around the outside edge of the hall, with 13 display games and 11 participation games to be found in the centre of the hall. There was also 5 living history groups and the ever popular bring and buy sale, allowing visitors to sell their unwanted games and figures to others who could put them to good use at a reasonable price. North Riding Wargames Club put on an impressive 28mm Vietnam display game on a large 12 by 6 table. The scenario setup required the Marines to rescue the crew and passengers of 2 downed Huey helicopters in the centre of the battlefield, as the Viet Cong converged on the crash site to capture them, or worse. From the back door of a Chinook helicopter, the crash site could be seen in the distance, the smoke rising into the air, alerting everyone to their position. Beyond the tree line where the crashed wrecks of the Huey helicopters were burning, medics did their best to attend to the wounded. Cautiously, the Marines slowly made their way through the dense jungle undergrowth to rescue their comrades, ever vigilant for ambush from the Viet Cong. Heavily armed Viet Cong soldiers could be seen advancing on the crash site from a small village at the far end of the fields. As another brave Huey helicopter swooped low over the enemy positions, trying to distract them, before an F-86 Sabre could be called in to assist in the rescue operation. The Siege of Vicksburg was the theme for the Grimsby Wargames Society. Set in early spring 1863, Major General Ulysses Grant launched a campaign to capture the city of Vicksburg. After laying siege to the city for 47 days, Vicksburg finally surrendered on the 4th of July.
Well, good morning. We're here at the Battleground Show. We're Grimsby Wargames Society. I'm Mal Taylor, the chairman. It's our 50th anniversary. So this year we're putting on the Battle of Vicksburg, which was a siege in the American Civil War, commanded by General Grant on the Union side and Pemberton on the Confederate side. We put the game together as a club, and various members have made all the scenery. I made all the boats, all scratch built. The town scratch built by Tony Walmsley, one of our club members. Mainly made out of Weetabix boxes and matchsticks, but the effect is fantastic. We've got all the lighting effect just to give that little twinkle, mainly made from solar lights and Christmas lights and all sorts of things. It gives a very nice, pleasant effect. And pleased to say it's all been well received.
The attention to detail is amazing, with fortified positions firing out from across the water at the various ships and boats looks very impressive. As does the train, bringing forward much needed supplies, along with a large cannon to help break the resistance of Vicksburg. Advancing lines of infantry seem relentless in their mission to overwhelm the city, flags waving in the breeze as they march towards the enemy. High up from the observation balloon, camps can be seen below as the siege continues, day after day, with heavy casualties on both sides. Tyneside Wargamers Club set up a large 12 by 10 table, displaying the Battle of Bautzen that took place in 1813, where a combined Prusso-Russian army that was massively outnumbered was pushed back by the French forces of Napoleon, but escaped destruction as they failed to block off their retreat. Large numbers of rank-and-file troops can be seen across the battlefield, beautifully presented in large blocks of infantry, cavalry and cannon. The brightly coloured uniforms of the era easily identified the troops to the generals, who gave commands as though it was a war game. You can almost hear the sound of the drums as they march towards each other, both armies intent on destroying their opposing foe. Lancaster Wargames Society is the first of the participation games to be reviewed. Entitled Courage mes braves, arretez les momies, which translates to Courage my braves, stop the mummies. Deep in the Sahara Desert, a group of archaeologists and their escort of French legionnaires find themselves in a desperate fight against the priests and the unspeakable creatures of Osiris, the god of the underworld. I particularly like the camera crew filming a group of French legionnaires, perhaps to document the strange goings-on in the desert. And as the description suggests, players will encounter horrific ritual sacrifices, and of course the odd mummy roaming around the board. Visitors to the show are invited to play in this fun and imaginative game, which is very cinematic. Westerhope Wargames Club presented a display game depicting Wellington in India around 1803. The board has a wonderful selection of brightly painted models that you would expect to see during the British Army Indian campaigns. It was a brutal conflict in which British armies made up of King's regiments and native troops from East India clashed with opposing forces. To complement the board, an impressive display of reference material and artefacts, including swords, pistols and other paraphernalia from the period, could be examined.
Hello, I'm Dave from Westerhope Wargames, and today we're putting a Wellington in India game on. All the figures are, or the majority of the figures are by Redoubt, terrain by Lass Valley mainly. We're a group of friends who wargame and do many other periods. And please look us up on the website, which is Westerhope Wargames blogspot.
Each regiment is carefully labelled, so you can quickly identify the various units lined up all over the battlefield. In addition to the various troop formations, the Indian fort adds an impressive backdrop to the battle scene, with its many flags adorning the battlements. Clashes of cavalry and troops can be seen across the battlefield, and the outcomes of each are carefully determined by the Westerhope wargamers. A rocket can be seen streaking across the heads of the advancing British troops. What trickery is this, I hear you ask? The Brompton bankers set up an early Crusade scenario using the Line Rampant rules along with the Crusade Estate supplement. Entitled Pilgrim's Progress, somewhere in Outrima a group of pilgrims and their escort are attacked by the Seljuks. This beautiful board is complemented with period scenery that adds to the authenticity of the game. The pilgrims only seek to bring the word of God to these unholy lands. They are prepared to fight, but rely on their escorts to protect them. Cavalry from the escort charge at the advancing Seljuks, lancers ready, hoping to hold off the attacking hordes to allow the pilgrims to escape. The Seljuks have their own light cavalry to counter the escorts, but armed with only bows and swords, they might not stand up well against the lancers. Standing back, the view from the watchtower is impressive, as the hordes below continue to advance against the pilgrims. The Durham Wargames Group display consists of a very large 28mm Italian Wars wargame, with over 3,000 figures taking to the field of battle. At one end of the board is the entrance to a great city as the forces do battle in the land outside the city walls. This board, incidentally, was created in collaboration with Colin Ashton. A display of period armour, flags and weapons can be viewed along the side of the table, which always provide good flavour to the game. The scale of the battle is just epic, with rank and file units clashing with others all over the battlefield. And do my eyes deceive me? Is that Leonardo da Vinci on top of the castle, painting one of the generals on his horse as the battle rages below? More troops join the battle, ready to serve, pikes held aloft and flags indicating the colours of each of their regiments. Viewed from one of the towers on the city wall, the various regiments battling for glory look colourful against the arid landscape. It was great to see Dougie's Wargaming blogspot again, depicting Goose Green in the Falklands conflict. This undeclared war between Argentina and the United Kingdom took place over a 10-week period. The Battle of Goose Green was fought at the end of May, located on the east side of the island. The settlement of Goose Green was also the site of an airfield.
Hiya, Dougie Robinson here from Dougie's Wargaming blog. Wide variety of wargaming interests, mainly running from sort of World War II onwards, so modern really. We're at the Battleground show today and we've got a 10mm Falklands game on. If you're at all interested in the channel, obviously if you search on Google it, it'll come up. Have a look, well, there's lots of stuff on there. If you want to subscribe, that would be great. Cover, as I've said, wide variety of interests. We'd love to see you on the channel.
The Falkland Islands are a bleak and barren landscape, making progress across the land slow and tough going for the British soldiers. A number of scattered buildings and outhouses dotted around the area formed the settlement of Goose Green. The British soldiers not only had to contend with the harsh environment, but had to carry all their equipment they needed on their backs. Air support was provided by several RAF Harriers, in addition to the Royal Navy Sea Harriers, attacking ground targets of opportunity identified by the British soldiers. You didn't need to wear glasses to see that the Prince Bishop Wargames group had an imposing display board depicting the siege of Barnard Castle in 1215. This conflict was part of the First Barons' War, which was a civil war between the Kingdom of England and a group of rebellious northern landowners, often referred to as the Barons. During the battle, the Lord of Warkworth Castle got too close to the castle walls and was shot by a crossbowman, mortally wounding him. This was a major setback for the Northern Barons' war effort, and in the end the castle successfully resisted the siege, and the rebels were eventually routed by armies loyal to King Henry III. Could this crossbowman on the castle walls be the very one who killed Euston de Vesey, Lord of Warkworth Castle? The northern rebels can be seen using the village buildings and walls as protection as they lay siege to the castle. Archers and crossbowmen continue to keep the rebels at bay by firing at anyone who was foolish enough to get too close to the castle walls. Trebuchets were deployed to sling large rocks at the castle walls in an attempt to break down their defences, along with siege towers that could transport rebel soldiers onto the castle walls. Redcar Ironbeards hosted another of the participation games for visitors to come along and play. Monty's attack is set after El Alamein, which saw Monty on the offensive, trying to push the German forces of Rommel back. The 8th Army are attacking along the coast, and the Afrika Korps have to stop the British offensive to give them a chance to regroup properly. A German field gun is being deployed to stop the advancing 8th Army, supported by infantry units digging into defensible positions. It may be possible for the Afrika Korps to target the British vehicles travelling in convoy along the edge of the coastline. The infantry are being supported by a mixture of Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks, providing mobile fire support. It will be difficult for the 8th Army to push the Afrika Korps out of the coastal towns they hold and defend. Certainly a challenging game. Generals and Kings had an outstanding board on display, showing the Normandy landings that took place on the 6th of June 1944. The Allied invasion of Normandy was the largest seaborne invasion in history and was codenamed Operation Neptune, although is often referred to as D-Day. Flying along the coastline, the various landing craft can be seen depositing troops, tanks and equipment onto the fortified beaches of Normandy as the Allies prepared to deliver the greatest blow of the war and liberate Western Europe from German occupation. As Allied troops disembark from the landing craft, they are faced with physical beach defences that would need to be overcome. You can only imagine the firepower that was rained down on men and equipment as they desperately tried to get off the beaches. Regular tanks and vehicles were taken to shore by large landing craft, specifically designed for the purpose. Although some tanks were modified to be amphibious, being able to swim ashore and immediately engage the enemy positions. These Donald Duck or DD tanks worked by erecting a floating screen around the tank, which could then be dropped once ashore. There were 30 traders present at the event, ranging from Mighty Lancer Games, Ironclad Miniatures and Pendraken, who present the Battlefield show. There was something for everyone and trade was brisk as wargamers looked for elusive games, miniatures and books to add to their collections. There was a splendid bolt-action demonstration game at the Warlord Games stand, along with many of their products, including the bolt-action range, Judge Dredd and Hail Caesar, to name but a few. Living history groups were well represented by the East India Company, Vanguard, the 68th Durham Light Infantry, the American Civil War Society and the Spanish Civil War group La Columna. As well as those in costume, there were many period items on display that you could view, and members were more than happy to explain what they were and how they were used. It was a great event and I would highly recommend you visit next year. If you enjoyed this overview of the Battleground Wargames Show, why not leave a comment? And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you wish to see similar content from the Retro Attic Man Cave.